There are three places in the world which are really lacking in investigation right now. One of them is the Amazon, 5.5 million square kilometers, very little archaeology done. Another is the Sahara Desert. The Sahara Desert, tough place to work. I can understand why there's little archaeology done there, but the Sahara Desert was green during the Ice Age. It had a completely different climate regime. We should consider the possibility that missing parts of the human story are there. And then under the continental shelves, because sea level rose 400 feet. These are three domains that archaeology has largely not investigated.
Over 6,000 years ago, a mysterious civilization had detailed maps of our solar system. The Sumerians created these drawings using clay. The surviving drawings show that they understood that the sun is a star at the center of the solar system and that other planets revolve around it. They even accurately sketched the orbits and positions of the planets. Interestingly, some of their paintings also depict strange images with giant entities. The Sumerians considered them to be deities. Intriguingly, some of the drawings of these gods even display symbols resembling human DNA sequences. Additionally, they had symbols related to medicine, which bear significant resemblance to modern medical symbols. To this day, we still cannot understand how thousands of years ago, the oldest civilization of mankind had such profound knowledge of astronomy. This raises the question of whether this ancient civilization was not backward, but rather had advanced far beyond our current understanding of them.
There is evidence suggesting that ancient civilizations may have possessed advanced technology. Firstly, the Hathor Temple in Egypt. Here there is a carving known as the Dendera light. Its design resembles the filament bulb technology we use today, with a core resembling a snake, which is the filament of the bulb, and the bottom part being where the power source is received. The second location is the Feathered Serpent Pyramid in Mexico, a place of worship for a deity from the sky. Nothing special until 2003 when a Mexican archaeologist discovered a pipe leading down to a hidden basement beneath this pyramid. He found jade masks, gemstone eyes, and notably a large amount of mercury, an extremely rare natural conductor used in technologies such as fluorescent bulbs and modern electronic devices. Interestingly, ancient Sanskrit records from India mention that their gods also used this substance as fuel for their aircraft called Vimana. Thirdly, the ancient Mayan astronaut. In the pyramid worshipping King Pakal of the Mayan Empire, there is a stone slab carved older than the pyramid itself. The strange thing about this carving is that it depicts a person operating a machine with both hands, with the nose connected to something that could be an air supply tube, and fuel being burned and expelled at the bottom of the machine. Not only that, this machine appears all over the world in various civilizations and is described as being used by entities from above the sky. Do you think that's just a coincidence?
Check this shit out, because this theory could prove that ancient civilizations actually had contact with each other across the world. According to the history books, there was absolutely no contact with outside cultures, but there are pyramids in 5 continents, with similarities that don't make any sense if history is correct. These are thousands of miles away, and almost all of them have this 3-window structure. Have you ever seen the photo of the Last Supper? Look in the background, it's the exact same windows. Mexico, Cambodia, and all the way in Egypt. All created in a time when traveling across the ocean wasn't a thing. Keep watching because it's about to get really good. The Bahamas recently discovered a massive man-made limestone road underwater, and at one time the limestone was cut perfectly. And these land bridges are popping up all over the world, all headed out to sea, pointing at the direction of new land. Or like this one recently found in Sakhalin, Russia, when a massive storm sucked all the water out, revealing this massive road leading out into the middle of the ocean. Or like this one a NASA satellite recently discovered, now known as Adam's Bridge, connecting Sri Lanka and India. So could it be that these cultures somehow had a way to connect with each other? The similarities are almost undeniable. Let me know what you think.
Everybody's heard about the Aztecs. Everybody's heard about the Maya. But before the Aztecs and before the Maya, there were a culture who are referred to as the Olmecs. Fascinating figure from one of the Olmec sites. And I made a big deal out of this because I think it is a big deal in Magicians of the Gods. Sitting in the middle of it is this human figure who's holding this strange bag in his hand. And It's just a fact that those identical bags are found in ancient Sumer in the hands of individuals who were considered to be civilization bringers, and they also show up on Pillar 43 at Göbekli Tepe. I call them man bags. And in that case, at Göbekli Tepe, we know they're at least 11,600 years old. So I wonder if we're looking at a sort of badge of office of a group of civilizers who traveled around the world trying to bring back to life a lost civilization.
There was once an ancient civilization that was even more advanced than we are today. And when I say advanced, I don't just mean the techniques that they use that we might not know about. Some believe that they actually discovered electricity and knew how to implement it throughout their society even better than us. I actually mentioned this before, but some people believe that they were able to actually get electricity by pulling from the Earth's electromagnetic field straight through the pyramids and then conducting it through the Earth, similar to Tesla's design for his tower. And while you may be thinking of Egyptians and tombs when I mention the pyramids, pyramids are actually not an Egyptian concept. And that's because they've been found on almost every continent in the world. What if all the pyramids were built by one extremely advanced civilization for the purpose of conducting electricity through their cities? Then thousands of years after that civilization got wiped out, they were discovered by the Mayans and the Egyptians and renovated and used for different religious or cultural purposes. And biblically speaking, in the book of Genesis, it talks about how there was a time when the entire world spoke the same language and attempted to build a tower that would reach the heavens. What if this was that same civilization?
Is a lie, and the history of us has been covered up. We are the new population of the world, and a one world, unified race of people used to exist all across. The Tartarians. They built all these buildings that you see, and they designed them in order to obtain the free energy from the atmosphere. No matter where you look, you'll find the same thing. People attribute that to design styles and architecture, and the story has been greatly falsified, most likely by artificial intelligence that we know nothing about. But it's clear that if you look around long enough, you'll see that there is much more to this story. What happened? If we did build these, how have we gone so far downhill? Why are the doorways so massive? Why are the old stories of giants being dug up from the ground? Many people say this is the millennial reign of Christ.
This is true. It changes everything. According to historical records, the first ancient civilization known to us is that of the ancient Sumerians. The Sumerians existed over 6,000 years ago, predating the Egyptians by 1,000 years. They resided in a region known as Mesopotamia, which encompasses present-day Iraq and parts of Iran, Kuwait, Syria, and Turkey. The Sumerians referred to themselves as black-headed ones, or black-headed people, and held a belief in gods known as the Anunnaki, described as children of the earth and skies. Some researchers speculate that the ancient Sumerians had a remarkable understanding of the universe, as depicted in artifacts showing the solar system with planets orbiting the sun. Adding to their intrigue are depictions of ancient handbags and bracelets. The Sumerians made groundbreaking inventions, including the wheel, alphabet, and the calendar we use today. They also developed irrigation systems for farming and established a system to measure time in seconds, minutes, and hours. Some believe that knowledge was bestowed upon them. The Sumerian civilization appears to have been one of the most advanced of its time, challenging modern explanations of our history. The discovery of 30,000 stone tablets from ancient Sumeria includes the story called the Epic of Gilgamesh, which features a great flood, an event also found in many other religious texts. Scientists link the end of the last ice age to several temperature anomalies and a significant rise in sea levels, likely caused by an asteroid impact. This catastrophic event may have led to the rapid melting of ice and widespread devastation to various species, including animals, plants, and humans. Some speculate that the tale of the Great Flood is not a mere myth, but a way of passing down knowledge through generations to ensure its survival. Recent findings, such as Göbekli Tepe in Upper Mesopotamia, dating back at least 11,600 years, have questioned the age and origins of the Sumerians. It is still uncertain where the ancient Sumerians originated from, and some theories suggest they may have migrated south into southern Mesopotamia, where the people of Göbekli Tepe became the Sumerians we know today. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments.
The mystery of the lost continent of Lemuria. Normally, when people think of a lost continent, the one that comes to mind is Atlantis, but the one you should know about is Lemuria. Lemuria, or Mu, was an ancient lost continent that was argued to be located in two different places, one being the Pacific Ocean, and two being the Indian Ocean, between India, Madagascar, and Australia. Weirdly, many well-known scientists and ancient cultures all over the world talked about Lemuria. During the mid-1800s, many biologists tried explaining the similarities in the flora and fauna of India and Madagascar by theorizing this lost continent. The first finding was from British zoologist Philip Sclater, who found lemur fossils in Madagascar and India that were completely missing in Africa and the Middle East. So he hypothesized Lemuria as the land route that these lemurs used to travel between these places. But now the mainstream understanding is that they traveled through thousands of miles of sea on rafts of vegetation. Like what? Now there was another man that also supported Philip's theory of Lemuria, that was Ernst Haeckel, who literally wrote the book The History of Creation and placed the start of humanity in several places, one being Lemuria, and who was also known as the Darwin of Germany, as he discovered thousands of new species and coined many terms in biology. Now in 2013, there was an article by CNN titled Lost Continent Found Under Indian Ocean, which, get this, was even published in National Geographic. This happened because they found traces of a mineral called zircon that was 3 billion years old on a 2 million year old island, which meant that the mineral they discovered came from a much older landmass that sunk in the Indian Ocean. They theorized that fragments of it could have been here, conveniently placed in one of the hypothesized areas of Lemuria. Now this is where it gets weird. The Tamil people of India believe that the ancestors of humanity came from a lost continent in the Indian Ocean, which they called Kumari Kandam, the cradle of civilization as according to their ancient texts. Now in part 2, I'll show the evidence for Lemuria being in the Pacific Ocean.
Evidence that we are far from the most advanced civilization and that our history is nothing but a lie. Like, they really try to tell us that this temple in India, Kalisha's temple, was carved with a chisel. This was all one solid rock at one point, and it only took them 5 years. They really try to tell you that. Like, come on, man. What kind of technology did these people have? They also try to tell us that Lashan giant Buddha in China was carved with a chisel. Bro, look at the fucking detail here. Look how big this thing is. You really try to tell me that this was done with a chisel? I truly think that giants used to roam the earth and they were the ones that built these magnificent structures. Like, bro, giant doorways, giant footprints, iconography of giants, like giant skeletons, giant axes all over the world. And the technology used was probably only known by the elites. Let's also observe some of these statues from our ancient past. This is all made out of stone. How did they make it see-through? We can't do this shit. Bro, look at the detail in this statue. Like, we can't even come close to this. You're telling me this was done with a chisel? There is absolutely no question that they are hiding the real truth of our ancient past from us. More than likely to keep us dumbed down and ignorant to our true potential. Look within, like the Buddha, to find the real truth to this reality.
I told you that those pseudo-archaeology videos you've been watching on YouTube about how the pyramids in Egypt were built were actually right all along. Let me show you something which will blow your mind. If sound can levitate objects in this way, what else can it do? Using sound vibrations to oscillate this copper tube attachment, fixed in place by a wooden block, it can cut directly through granite, but that doesn't explain how they moved those huge 80-ton blocks, you say.
California that's called Mount Shasta, and supposedly there's a whole city in that mountain. The legend says that in 1904, a British proctor, the guys that go find gold and stuff, his name was J.C. Brown, and he went to the mountain to go look for gold, and he found a cave, and he went into the cave, and it was actually like a tunnel, and the tunnel went like 11 miles, and he found a whole like little city in there, and then he found like tombs in there, and the bodies in there were like 7 to 10 feet tall. He found 27 of them. They look like humans, but they're just bigger. So he tried to keep a secret, but then he started being like really interested in and started like researching more, until like 30 years afterwards, he gathered up like 80 people to investigate it and like excavate it and things like that. On the day they was about to go explore it, he went missing and they never found him again. And a lot of people think that city is still like active, like there's like not us, but
Amazon is a colossal mystery. There was a Spanish explorer who went down the Amazon River system in 1541 to 1542. He was the first European to cross the entire length of South America. He reported seeing incredible cities, millions of people, a thriving culture. And 100 years later, when other Europeans got into the Amazon, they couldn't find these cities. So they said, oh, Francisco Orellana, that was his name, made it all up. It was just a fantasy. And then in the last decade, as the clearances of the Amazon have proceeded, we've begun to see the traces of those cities. What happened was that the Spaniards brought smallpox into the Amazon. Smallpox devastated the local population because there was no immunity to it. There was a massive die-off. The cities were deserted. Within 50 years, they were completely overgrown by the jungle, and that's why they were not seen by the explorers who came in 100 years later. A city like London, which had a population of roughly 50,000 in the 16th century, there were cities of that size all over the Amazon. And a possible total population of the Amazon that exceeded 20 million.
Tombs inside the Grand Canyon? That's what an explorer found right before the government closed the area off from the public. Way back in 1909, the Arizona Gazette reported a story of a miner, G.E. Kincaid, looking for gold in the Grand Canyon. While journeying down the river, he came across what looked like steps carved into the canyon side, so he decides to check it out. The steps, he claimed, were perfectly carved, not a natural formation, and as he approached the top, he came across a man-made cave entrance, which do exist all around the Grand Canyon, but this one was different. He went inside, turned on his light, and saw tunnels chiseled with perfect architecture and more branching paths deeper inside. He kept going until he comes across an enormous room several 100 feet long. In the middle stood a giant statue of what looked like Buddha, holding lotus flowers in each hand. Now, Buddha has nothing to do with ancient Egypt, which actually makes this more of a mind trip, but we're getting there, I promise. This looks like it was an ancient underground city, which actually exists all around the world in places like Derinkuyu in Turkey. Kincaid was amped. This gotta be the discovery of the century, so of course he leaves and asks for funding to explore more from the Smithsonian, the world-leading museum research and education institute, the gatekeeper of archaeological findings, made by the US government, who gladly agree. They send a team of scientists and miners led by S.A. Jordan to fully excavate this mind-blowing discovery. With this team backing the expedition, Kincaid goes back to the caves and realized he barely scratched the surface. He left extremely detailed journal entries describing the whole excavation, with hallways up to 12 feet wide and large oval doorways throughout the underground complex. During this excavation, they find full-size rooms which appear to have been made for dining, winding halls with detailed architecture, and artifacts like pottery, urns, and to their surprise, copper tools and swords, along with rooms built for metalwork. All signs of an ancient civilization far more advanced than what should have been here at the time. But then they find this: Egyptian hieroglyphs carved and painted on the walls, and stone tablets with similar hieroglyphs engraved. And then finally what appeared to be a crypt, filled with little cubby holes in the walls, each containing mummies of giant humanoids, some even being reported as reptilian looking. Yeah, Egyptian tombs in the Grand Canyon. They call this complex the Citadel, and by the end of their expedition, hundreds of rooms were discovered, estimated to house up to 50,000 people. They determined that, of course, this must be the remains of an advanced civilization that were here before the natives, and somehow brought the knowledge of the ancient Egyptians from the other side of the world into the Americas. G.E. Kincaid and S.A. Jordan presented their Egyptian hypothesis to the Smithsonian, who obviously did not like the sound of that and denied further excavation. Egyptian hieroglyphs spotted outside of Egypt? Absolute nonsense, right? Maybe, but this isn't the only time that such a claim was made, like the Gosford hieroglyphs carved into rock in Australia, which look almost identical to that of the Egyptians. It's hard to tell exactly how old they are, but of course they're labeled a hoax. Someone else carved them here a few years ago to trick the world. Or the written language of the Mi'kmaq, a Native American tribe that lived along the Atlantic coast, which shares a baffling number of similarities with Egyptian hieroglyphs, two cultures that allegedly had no contact among each other. This one was just a coincidence, of course, just like the Fuente Magna bowl found in Bolivia with Proto-Sumerian cuneiform script writing on it. That's ancient Mesopotamian writing uncovered in South America. So artifacts of ancient Middle Eastern civilizations found in the Americas have happened, but we just ignore them. To this day, the Smithsonian denies this expedition in the Grand Canyon ever happened, and the stories of the explorers are of course deemed a hoax. So is any of this real? The native indigenous people seem to think so. Native American tribes like the Navajo, Zuni, Acoma Pueblo have legends of a race that existed there before them, even citing the Grand Canyon specifically as the place where the first people emerged from. These myths all speak of either a race of reptilians, yes, we're in lizard people territory now, or giants that civilized the area, building underground cities to protect themselves. The Hopi tribe even have a story about a sky god who, after a series of cataclysms, emerged from a moving star and took the tribe to underground caves in the Grand Canyon region to protect them. The Havasupai people believe the canyon is the home of the Supai, the spirit of their ancestors. The Paiute culture got the legend of the Havmusubs, who also lived in an underground city and had silver tubes that shot lightning that could end a man's life, and silver canoes in the sky, which all line up perfectly with the flood myths, not to mention UFO sightings, around the world where godlike beings descend from the sky and give gift civilization to humanity. And is exactly why the Smithsonian cringes at the thought of admitting to this, because it would imply that cultures like the ancient Egyptians had overseas contact with the Americas, completely destroying their current narrative of isolationism, which states that groups of humans evolved independently of each other all around the world. Today, this section of the Grand Canyon has some interesting official names for the formations found here, like the Tower of Set, Horus, Isis Temple, Ra, the Cheops Pyramid, all Egyptian names, and these formations have the weirdest, most interesting shapes, unlike those found in any other canyon. Alright, enough yapping. Where is this cave, and can't we just go to it today to prove this once and for all? Really thought it was that easy, huh? The exact area where the citadel would be found has, of course, been marked off limits by the government. The Grand Canyon has hundreds of man-made caves all over it that are confirmed real, with only 30 that have been officially mapped out, some of which are sealed with steel gates for safety. When amateur explorers tried checking out the region, planes and helicopters would appear out of nowhere over areas designated as no-fly zones, some claiming they can even spot remnants of pyramids and other ancient structures in the cliffs of the canyon, implying the Grand Canyon may actually be the site of a bustling ancient city. Rumors of ancient Egyptian remains and underground cities in the Grand Canyon, government closes the area off, and then planes and drones are found scouting the area. Are they hiding something from us, or am I just gonna get stitched into another Mr. Know-It-All debunking
Civilizations
video?
were far more advanced than we thought. First, let's talk about the ancient Egyptians. This is the Orion's Belt, a star constellation. Is it a coincidence that it perfectly lines up with the pyramids of Giza? Now, what's crazy to me is that the speed of light and the altitude of the pyramids are the same number. It's also mind-blowing that the pyramids line up with the motherboard of a modern computer. It's also shocking that ancient cave drawings have depictions of light bulbs. So what if this is a proof that